Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 6th of January, comes to you from London. And the big news, of course, is what's been going on in the Middle East, and we're seeing the markets being quite spooked by that. The dollar is in medium-term bearish mode. We're seeing a little bit of a kick down this morning. We're just holding on to short-term bullish and long-term bullish, but medium-term bearish. So just the uncertainty there is weighing on the dollar, which is normally seen as a safe haven. Euro, its medium-term recovery continues, but long-term, again, in contrary to the dollar, we've got long-term bearish and short-term bearish, although we have got some upside targets. So it does look like the euro will improve. The yen is normally the risk trade, so we are seeing the dollar is weaker against the yen, and that's consistent with global fears just from that Middle East. So we are seeing the yen strengthening, the dollar weakening. Looking at sterling against the dollar, we're seeing here much the same thing. Sterling is strong, dollar weakness just kicking in, and against the euro, we are also just seeing. Sterling looking stronger here on the medium and long-term charts. Just short-term, we had a little bit of a resurgence in the euro. Taking a look at Bitcoin, it's up 2% this morning. Not enough really to change the medium-term picture. We might be seeing a long-term improvement here with the lagging line coming through the cloud. Very unusual to see the price below and the lagging line above, but that's what we might end up with. The interesting thing is short-term we have got some upside potential here. We've got quite a good upside target if we can break to new highs, but that looks unlikely at the moment. We're still in that medium-term bearish mode. On Friday, we saw the S&P 500 index down 0.7% on the attack in Iraq. So we're just seeing the markets pulling back on that. We are still bullish on all three time frames, so the charts are still bullish, and the NASDAQ 100, we're seeing much the same picture here, of course. That's quite bullish as well. We're seeing the Dow also down 0.8%, so that's hit the Dow, but again, the short-term trend is not yet bearish. It'll be interesting to see how we fare this week, whether that trend will be broken. And the Russell 2000 index, we are also seeing just starting to creep through. So we're seeing the smaller caps were probably worse hit on Friday. Looking at the futures this morning, we're seeing the S&P 500 index future down 0.75%. Again, that trend just now breaking down, so we would normally expect to see it in the futures first, of course, and the NASDAQ down 0.9%. So it does suggest that the US market is going to open lower this morning. We're already seeing the UK index, the DAX index is really badly hit, but we look at the UK index first of all, down 1% here. That's taking us into short-term bearish territory just. And if we look at the Midcaps in the UK, they're down 1% as well. So the market taking a hit really across the board, and we're seeing also here just that falling away as well. And the DAX is down nearly 2% this morning, so that's really been hit, and that's showing up in the charts as we see here. We see the medium-term trend breaking down and the short-term really clearly lower. The CAC Quarante also down 1.3%, so we're seeing here that's falling away as well, and Japan was down 1.3%. We're seeing really across the board markets pulling back on this Middle East fears at the moment. So that's really weighing heavily. We're seeing here Japan lower. That stronger yen, of course, not helping the Japanese market. And if we look at the Hang Seng, we're down 0.8%. Interestingly, the Shanghai Composite Index, little changed. So we're not seeing a great deal of change there. But the one market that was quite badly hit was the Sensex, down nearly 2% overnight. So that's starting the week in pretty bearish mode. So we're seeing the Sensex lower there, and now clearly bearish on that short-term chart. So quite a sell-off there. Looking at the Aussie market, it was little affected. Interesting with the bushfires going on there, but we are actually still short-term bearish, if you like. Oz had its sell-off last week. Brent crude is up 1.7%, so we're seeing quite a big jump in Brent crude. We've been quite bullish on Brent. We are in the strong quarter for Brent crude. We're seeing new upside targets, 8% higher, 5% on the short-term chart, so Brent is higher. And looking at WTI, we're up 1.5% here this morning as well, so that's quite bullish now in the long, medium, and short-term range. So we expect oil prices to climb. We've been saying that for a few weeks before this attack, so it's quite interesting that the news is following what the charts have been saying, but that we are seeing the oil price looking strong as we'd expect. And US NatGas is actually looking a little bit better on the short-term chart, just starting to come through, but interestingly, we are still bearish on that medium and long-term position, so quite a lot to take in there. Gold, of course, has jumped. It's up a massive 3% this morning, making a new high. So that's interesting for gold. We're seeing 1557. We've got upside targets to 1530. That's now smashed. New target to 1690 and 1707. So $1,700 looks like a very likely target for the gold price now, that we're breaking to new highs, so that's good news for gold. And looking at silver, we're up 2% there as well, so we're seeing quite a move there. Looking at US 10-year yields, we are seeing here that we on the yield we're sitting at about 1.77%. So we have broken down a little bit there on the yield, but that long-term recovery still looking very much in train. And bond prices up this morning. Again, geopolitical fears will have a little bit of an effect there, and we're seeing the bond over the last few days has really rallied. But the medium-term and long-term position is still looking not so great for bond prices in 2020. This data coming to you from Thomson, so from Refinitiv Icon, or if you're a private user, the Metastock Zenith system, it's exactly the same data. If we look at the individual stocks now, and I'm using Yahoo Finance data here. We see the sea of red in the indices here, so this is all coming from Yahoo Finance. You can pick this layout up from the Updata library. And first of all, we'll take a look at the Dow on Friday. We saw a sea of red here for the Dow, only one stock up, and that was United Technologies. And on the downside, we had Dow down 2.5%. So we are seeing some pretty big falls there on Friday. It's quite a lot of stocks down over 1%, and be interesting to see with the future what happens today. The Nasdaq 100, we again didn't see many stocks up on Friday. A handful of stocks. Tesla, the best performer. They're actually having a little bit of a resurgence, and we see here they're up nearly 3% on Friday, so that's quite significant as well. So quite a big move there for Tesla on Friday, and we're seeing here how they've had that complete re-rating as well. And the Aussie market, we did have a slightly more mixed performance, not so many stocks clearly down, and we can see here from the sea of green that we did actually have a lot of stocks up overnight there. The Nifty 50, as we saw, the Indian market hit quite badly. Only 3 stocks up in India. Titan Company, Wipro, and Power Grid Generation, but quite a few stocks down on the downside. And if we look at the downside here, we've got stocks down 4.5%, Bajaj Finance, Vedanta Resources, Z Entertainment, quite a few stocks down around 4%. So quite a number of stocks been heavily hit there in the Indian market. Taking a look now at Europe, FTSE 100, we've only got 4 stocks up this morning. A handful of stocks, and inevitably the oil majors. So everything else is pretty much down. We've got Hikma Pharmaceuticals, they're down 6% this morning, so that's quite a fall there. Interestingly also, the only other stock that was up was BAE Systems, so the Middle Eastern impact having some effect there, up 1% there. But we see here Hikma Pharma falling quite heavily this morning. That's putting them in clearly bearish territory. Taking a look at the 250, much the same picture here. It's bearish on the and a handful of stocks bullish. Remember, there's 250 stocks, and there's probably only about 20 stocks up, so less than 10% of stocks are up. The rest are down quite heavily. And if we look at the downside, we can see here we've got Paragon Banking Group's down 4.6%, CAS Minerals down 4%. A lot of stocks being quite heavily hit with this Middle Eastern crisis. Taking a look at the Euro stocks, again, we're seeing some pretty big falls here this morning. Of course, we saw that Germany was down significantly. We've only got three stocks up. Eni and Total, of course, the oil stocks, they're having an impact on that oil price. Sanofi up 0.6%. Everything else in Europe is down. We've got Lind Group down 4.7%, BASF down 4%, Daimler down 4%. Some pretty big falls here this morning, although the trends are still holding on to bullish. And here we see the live pricing updates coming in from Yahoo Finance. That's it for today. Until next time, happy charting. See you then.